Stay with us for the next hour and a half, or 90 minutes or so, for talks coming up from the likes of Per Pedersen, the likes of Tim Colby and Deirdre McClashen. And we have a really, really great talk on the impact of AI on the Chief Marketing Officer from Wes Nichols, closing out the stage at 3:40. At this time, originally, we were supposed to have Alexander, the CMO from Lufthansa, with us to do a talk on the future of empathy. Sadly, and this joke has already been used, he missed his flight. I joke somewhat. Unfortunately, he has been detained on other business and wasn't able to make it. He does send his apologies, and hopefully we will be able to get him to join sometime in the near future. But for now, we still have some amazing talks coming up, including the next one that's waiting for us backstage. So, with so much noise out there, what does it take to have your voice heard and to have your presence felt in the modern communications landscape? Setting out the secrets for designing a fit-for-purpose communication strategy in 2018, can you welcome to stage, in conversation with Business Insider's Jim Edwards, Ketchum CEO, Barri Rafferty.
All right, Barry. First of all, thank you so much for doing this. We do appreciate it. It feels to me like there's a bit of a hostile environment for marketers out there now, people in the PR business. Is it tough out there?
What do you guys think? I think it's tough out there. It's tough to break through. We're in the age of fake news, which we know is having its own impact on what people trust. And so as you're starting companies, I think building that trust is critical today, and there's a lot of techniques to do that.
So we have a lot of tech startups in the audience, obviously, and when they said I was going to be talking to you, my initial reaction was, well, hold on, I know a little bit about tech startups, and these guys are like, you know, they're sort of 2, 3, 5 people in a room coding their product. The very last thing they should be doing is spending money on a PR agency. But I suspect you think I'm wrong.
Well, I think you have to tell your story, right? So I'm going to ask a question. How many of you think if you got on the elevator on, let's say, the 5th floor, and you were going down to the lobby, and you had 2 minutes to tell your grandmother what you were doing and what your company's benefits are, she would understand by the time you got there? Come on, the old show of hands. A few of you, not too many, right?
Very few people.
Very few. So one of the first things I think that you all have to work on is what is your narrative and what is the most differentiating piece of information that you can share? And can you simply articulate the benefits of your company? Because whether you're meeting with investors, you're trying to attract customers, or you're trying to make sure that you actually can articulate in a B2B world, right, what that is. I find, and even listening the last 2 days, there's so much jargon that people are using that it's really hard to understand what they're doing.
This is true. Last year, I was a judge in the pitch competition. You know, so I'm like seeing a new tech startup pitch, often for funding, every 10 minutes. And I have them come through in very quick succession. And they've got the slides. And with a very high percentage of them, it's 30 or 40% of pitches I've seen here at Web Summit. By the time they get to the end of the pitch, my first question is, I actually still don't really understand how your company works. And if you yourself can't explain what you do, no one's going to explain it for you. There's not going to be some like magic money god in the sky that's going to go, oh, I figured out this puzzle you've set me. Here's investment.
Right, and I think today, you know, it's not just about words, it's also about visualization. There's a lot of techniques you can use, whether it's infographics, video, you know, creating diagrams and things that really simply, because the truth is, we have no attention span today. Microsoft says that our attention span is now less than a goldfish. You have about 8 seconds to get their attention, right? How scary is that?
Wow. The goldfish have evolved beyond us. So We see at this conference a lot about growth hacking. Should people use PR for growth hacking? Again, I say that, and I'm like quite skeptical because we just saw a fantastic presentation by Larry Kim, former WordStream.
Yeah.
So he knows about growth hacking.
So the definition, and if you think about growth hacking, right, you're all trying to acquire customers. But what I would say, and what you have to think about public relations today, is about building relationships. And those relationships are going to be with the media, they're going to be with influencers, they're going to be with your early customers and your employees, and who are the people that are going to become advocates for your brand and your company. And I also think you have to think of yourself, because as a leader of a company, and whether it's 3 people and gets to 15 and gets to 50, you are the representative of that brand when you start. And so what does your social profile look like? Why are people interested in following you? Why are people going to believe in you? And why are they going to have faith in what you produce? So we work a lot, too, with founders, CEOs, CMOs, even CIOs, at creating their own footprint on different channels so that they can attract customers and attract thought leadership and use that to create interest in their company.
Yeah. One thing that fascinates me about early stage founders is they often think that, particularly in the very early days of the company, that no one can see what they're doing, and there's no audience for their activity, and that what they're doing is happening in private because they're still a very small company. And they don't realize that months or years down the line, some of these messages, essentially, will come back to bite them in the ass. Mark Zuckerberg, probably every month there's a story reminding people that Mark Zuckerberg once had a business card that said, "I'm the CEO, bitch." And that he also once sent a friend a direct message that said, "They trust me, these fucking idiots," or something like that. And it's like part of the Facebook brand narrative now.
Yep.
So is that changing? Do you find that founders are more conscious from the beginning that their ethical behavior has to be much more careful, that they have to stand for something properly, and that, do you know what I mean?
I think the data shows, if you look at particularly millennials, which many of you are in the audience, right? Millennials truly care and are more likely, 64%, to buy from a company that they think has a social activism for the things that they want. But what I think you still find with a lot of startups is reputation issues, because they don't think about culture early on, and they don't think about what kind of culture they want in a company. And that culture starts when you have 3 people, 10 people, 25 people, right, as it grows. If you don't think about that early on and try to establish what you want to stand for as a company and what type of employee culture do you want to create. And that happens in how you talk to your people, because then your people talk to other people, and you set the tone for how they're going to manage. You set the tone for customer service, right, and that interaction. So all of those things, I think if you look at companies and you look at someone like Zappos that's used that as a differentiator in their culture, it's also helped their brand and what they stand for. And the other thing we're seeing now is companies go pretty far on what they stand for. Nike, Patagonia, right, recently. In the US, Patagonia, I've never seen a company go out and actually advocate for politicians that believed in land trust and things that they believed in. So if you do that and you know your customer base, they can be extremely loyal to you.
Yeah. Does Ketchum ever walk away from clients or decline their business because their internal company culture is so bad and you're just like, I can't fix this?
Well, the good news is we have a change management group, and they try to fix everyone. But we do walk away when a company actually, what we call a say-do ratio. And what we say is you cannot fix a reputation issue by changing your words. You actually have to change what you do. So you can't just say, oh, we have new values and new roles in the company. So if a company has a say-do gap and we don't feel like they're really willing to do the hard work, we will walk away.
Okay, that's interesting, because it does suggest that there's a price for being an asshole, right? There will be partners who will not work with you in the future. Like you said, your reputation will precede you. We're getting a couple of questions on Slido, and I'll get to them in a minute. But if you want to ask Barry a question about PR and how to promote your tech company in this crazy world, please use Slido application inside the Web Summit app, and I'll read some questions off the board. The first one is, startups and SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, often don't have the resources to employ a PR agency such as Ketchum. What would you suggest they do?
Yeah, so I think the good news is for all of you is there's a ton of great freelancers out there, because we're not usually going to work with small startups. But having somebody that's part of your team, even if it's a part-time person, that can really help you think about building your reputation, that personal profile, that corporate profile, working on that narrative, you know, media training. Some people here said to me they had their first media opportunity, and how do you make sure you're articulating those key points? It takes practice. It's like building a muscle for anything. So I think that engaging early somebody that's playing that role for you and helping you also really think about that ecosystem that you want to reach. Because in any company, we believe, whether it's a big company or a small company, there's a group of key influencers that also can become third-party advocates for you. So how do you identify them? How do you get to know them and spend the time reaching out to build that relationship so that they can start to understand your business and at different phases help you to endorse that? Because that third-party endorsement is going to be critical usually to really scale.
Okay. So let me give you a piece of advice, because I'm often on the receiving end of Ketchum staff.
All right, here we go.
So there's two types of PR people in my universe, basically. There are the people with whom I have like a proper, real relationship, where if I email them or call them up, they will answer my question, sometimes off the record or on background, but I can have like a proper, essentially unscripted, real conversation about what the heck is going on inside the company. And then there's the other type of PR people where they're just basically spamming me with press releases. They want me to write just their line and nothing else. And there's no other relationship or conversation whatsoever.
So if my people are doing that, tell me now, because they're out.
I'm not saying, no, I'm not talking about Ketchum specifically. Yeah. I'm talking about the world of PR. Yeah. But this, I feel, is a mistake a lot of, particularly tech startups, make. They will hire their first PR freelancer, as you say, or they will even get in a larger agency eventually. And they will just, the client will simply say, this is the message I want to get out there, get this message out. Yeah. So in our organization, that doesn't work. No. What's your advice on that?
So a couple things. During some mentor sessions this morning, one of the things I said to people is you really have to, it's reputation by permission, and you build that permission over time. So one of the things I said is to start to follow, and whether it's on LinkedIn or other channels, people that in your universe you might want to contact, right? People that are going to be potential buyers of your product, people that you admire that are in the industry, and really listen. Listen to me as competitive intelligence, right? And you start to understand what they're interested in, what they're engaged in. And often the best way to get to them is to start a dialogue, to comment on things, talk about your new technology and why it might be relevant to them or to you and your audience, and engage in a way that's actually meaningful and is give and take. Because if you're just pitching and you want them to follow you and you're not known, it's really hard to get their attention. And you can send out as many cold calls as you want, but without starting that rapport, I think it's very hard. The other thing is sometimes you can hire somebody that has a rapport with the type of people, and that type of PR person can help you with their connections and influence and help you get into those meetings. But it's still going to be important for you, if they get in front of you, right, to tell their story in a compelling way, so you want to cover it. Okay.
I'm going to take another question from Slido. This is a bit sort of left field, but I'm interested in the answer. Is there a role for AI in PR?
So we actually use AI already pretty much every day in our agency right now. If we're looking at influencers for a company, so we might be working on Gillette, for instance, and we're going to look at contingencies, right? Not only the shaving, but guys that might be interested are looking at sports and other things. So how do we identify those influencers that are going to reach our target audience? We actually do it with software that's IBM-powered, AI-enabled, that helps us sort through and call down who might be in that universe. Then our people have to look at their content, understand if it's right for the brand, if it's the right partnership, because even the big brands are trying to create reach and relevancy through those influencers, but finding the right ones in the pool today takes a lot of not only computer science, but human science as well.
OK, another question from Slido. What is the single most common error that PRs make, and how should they avoid it?
Oh gosh, I don't know if there's one single error, but I think we touched on it a little bit before. If you think you're going to send out 50 things and you're going to get a lot of attention, that's really hard. I think your story has to be really crafted for each outlet, right? So if they're pitching, a business story, or you're pitching a technology story or an AI story, how you frame it and make it relevant for that audience is key. The other thing we know is, reporters today don't have a lot of time. So the better you can kind of package it, give them the visuals, maybe some video, things like that, that are going to help them make it easy to do your story, you're going to have a greater chance of them doing it. And I don't know about you, do you have goals in terms of your own social presence and get followership? Because sometimes those social assets help as well. I know a lot of reporters now have to kind of create the online version as well.
We don't have goals as such, but it's obviously an advantage internally if your personal brand or your personal social footprint is growing and people can see you engaging. I would say one mistake. Here's a very extreme example of a mistake that PRs make with me all the time. I got a pitch from a small PR agency that basically wanted some coverage of their client who was like a luxury goods sales website. And it just sold extremely expensive nonsense, basically, but for extremely rich people. And the pitch was basically, please interview my CEO and write a story about the success of this site. And I responded back to this woman who I knew, and I said, look, you've got to bear in mind, I get 200 pitches a day that are exactly like this. Interview my CEO, it's very successful, and tell our success story. I said, so I'm not going to do that because I know my readers won't read that because it's a very common story. But I poked through the website, and I noticed that one of the objects he's selling on the website is a personalized submarine that you can buy, a little mini submarine about the size of the sofa, and if you have your own lake, you can go in your submarine and go underwater in the lake. I said, you know what? If you let us ride in that, we'll take photos of it, we'll shoot video, we'll definitely do a story about that, and your CEO and your company will get a mention in that. Can we do that? The client said no. And the client said no because they were just so locked in to their original pitch.
Right.
And there's no flexibility there and no realization that the thing that the media might find interesting about you is not the thing that you think is interesting about yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's also great, creating a good opportunity for something that's visual, that's engaging, that's different and experiential. And we talk a lot about what is the experience. Because we're all trying to not only showcase and sell our product, but also help people understand the in-benefit and the experience. So taking the ride in the submarine gives you a sense of that experience. And the more you can do that, the better. And there's lots of creative ways to bring things to life. And sometimes it's an experience, sometimes it's even in great animation, different ways of bringing things to life that at least are more engaging.
Yeah. I'll take one more credit from Slido. Do you think communication is taken seriously by business managers? Do you feel these key decision makers consider PR essential, or is it just another communications tool? I like this question because one of the threats your industry faces is this could be commoditized very easily.
Well, I think it's interesting. I actually think public relations and communications has a higher seat at the table than ever before. And I often think in big companies, we're becoming the conscience of an organization. Because if you look at what's happening in the world today, we're listening to the employees, we're listening to the external audiences, we're listening to the competitive set, and we're really helping early identify some of the issues that might be coming down the pike. You're looking at employees taking steps back and pushing back on companies. And so for us today, I think we have a greater seat at the table. I also think, in the world today of, advertising and fake news and things, people are tuning things out. So using influencers and more credible communicators is becoming more and more important. And the other thing I'll say is when you have an issue or crisis, right, we're the first call. It's like, okay, I haven't talked to you in a month, but get up here to my office right now. And what we say to our clients, too, is if you're not out there every day, You can't just have your CEO out there on the bad days because they haven't built in that credibility and that followership. So it's more and more important today than ever to build your reputation over time so that you have people, your employees, your advocates, your third parties that are going to defend you and you're not just defending yourself.
That is really interesting because it brings it back around to Mark Zuckerberg again, who I mentioned earlier in our talk. He notoriously is quite media shy and doesn't like the media and the press and basically doesn't like dealing with us, which is fine. Not everybody does. And when Facebook ran into trouble, political trouble earlier this year, he had to testify in front of Congress. Suddenly, he has to do a bunch of stuff. He doesn't have that PR media fitness. Yeah. He has to get up to speed instantly, and that is very hard. And if you contrast him with, say, Tim Cook of Apple, who doesn't deal with the media a lot, but he has quite a sort of regular TikTok sequence of sit-downs with media, whose reputation is better? Whose reputation is more solid? Tim Cook, I would argue, is much better positioned to deal with the crisis right now than Mark Zuckerberg was.
So if we leave you with one piece of advice, it's build that muscle today. Start with your narrative, learn how to speak, and make sure other people in your company, as well as yourself, are building those relationships and building that persona. Because the truth is, at the end of the day, the founder is critical to your success.
All right, that was very smooth pitch. We are out of time. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barri Rafferty of Ketchum.
Thank you.